Welcome everyone to our next webinar, free webinar in US Indoors webinar series. I'm James Hargrove, Communication Director for US Indoor, and today we got what I would call a banger. If you're looking to save money, energy costs at your facility, you've come to the right place. Today we have Nolan Sheeran, relatively new member to US Indoor, but occupies a very familiar space. We'll be conducting our about a 1 hour webinar. We have about 45, 50 minutes of content planned for you. In addition to some Q&A afterwards. The recording of this webinar will be sent out to everyone and made public. So we want to welcome everyone aboard, especially our presenter today, Nolan. How you doing? The floor is yours. Go ahead with your intro and you're off to the races.
Cool. Thanks, James. Yeah, again, Nolan Sheeran. I'm over in Buffalo, New York. Been with NextEra for only 2.5 years or so. Um, I try to keep this relatively simple with the energy world. I know there's a lot of moving components and people don't know what they're being charged or if they're able to save money on their electric and gas bills or if they can use any type of service that might be able to cut those costs. I know for, indoor sports facilities, I work with quite a few hockey rinks and like indoor turf field stuff like that. And I understand that energy bills are a big part of your guys' expenses. So today I just kind of want to I'll have a little presentation, pretty general overview of what we do and how we might be able to help. And if ultimately you guys want to, after this call, decide to, hey, I want to see if I might be able to help you out in any way. I'm basically just trying to pitch that and be able to review your guys' setup. And if we can provide value in any way, then that's great. And if not, then I usually let you know pretty quick and say, just tell you it is how it is type of thing. So um, I guess, James, I can just share my PowerPoint. I'll share my screen if that's
Absolutely. Go ahead. And while you're doing that, I'll echo again what I said earlier. If you guys have questions along the way, don't feel shy at any point. You can just simply unmute yourself and you know uh, give out your question. And or if you're the shy type, excuse me, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely open forum here. Whatever you guys want to ask me, feel free. So again, I can just kind of get into what NextEra is. Fortune 200 company. We're one of the bigger energy suppliers in the country. We do it all. So I'm mostly large commercial industrial. So a lot of businesses similar to your guys' size. So it'd be, 50,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet, multi-facility businesses, a lot of sports facilities, a lot of hockey rinks, a lot of indoor sports spots. Yeah, ultimately, what I do, we're a giant company, but what I do is I just help reduce your supply costs on electric and gas. So we can kind of just get into that right away. So like obviously with you guys, energy is a huge expense. People don't always know that it's a controllable expense. Sometimes you're just floating with your utility company and you don't know that you have the ability to choose a different supplier, which would be us. So all we're doing, and to keep it black and white, all we're doing, let's say your supply rate is one thing, utility company is charging you 10 cents a month. We might be able to get you something like 7 cents a month, something like that. So we have different products, whether it's a fixed rate, a variable rate. There's different products that might fit your business, whether it's your load or your usage, things like that. Which again goes into an actual. If we were to review your bills, we'd be able to figure that out pretty quickly. I know with indoor sports, you guys do have pretty consistent load, consistent usage. You're on all day. I'm sure on weekends you're keeping busy, and then on weekdays it's anything from 2 p.m. or when people get out of school until the end of the night. So there is a lot of usage being had in those times. Again, utility pricing extremely volatile, unpredictable. I think Greg, you said that you're over in Mass and just how much your energy bill spiked because again, energy, which I haven't said, energy is really based on the weather. So those intense months, so like November, December, January, February, and then the hot summer months when the AC is blasting. So mid June, July, August, early September, those are the months that you're probably getting hit the hardest. And your usage is way up in those months. And sometimes your utility company increases your rate a little bit too much in those months as well, which leads to some pretty insane costs. And ultimately, all we try to do is, mitigate the risk on your side and lock you in with something that's a bit more feasible and ultimately, create savings for you guys. Does anybody have any questions on that? Feel free to speak up if I'm not making any sense.
No, just to give you kind of an idea of what we are, and I'm not sure what other people on the call are in terms of the facility, but we're like I said, we have two indoor domes or supported structures during the winter. However, those are seasonal for us. So we take them down the last week of March every year. So then at that point, we're we're a 4-field outdoor facility. Run 365 pretty much, with the exception of a few holidays. But the winter is what really kills us. And with the winter we had, when you get blizzards like we did, and you're familiar with the snow, Nolan, up in Buffalo, when you get 2 blizzards of 3 feet of snow, your heat has to be cranking in those bubbles. Because if you don't, those bubbles are coming down because they're too cold. They won't shed the snow. They won't melt the snow. And what really kills you is during snowstorms like that. And Sean, I know you can attest to this, but they you end up running that heat at 70, 75 degrees for 2 or 3 straight days to help with the overall melting process after the storm is gone. So that's where we really get killed during bad winters, is from a gas perspective, because it's just you get no people in the building and you get the heat cranking, so it's a tough pill to swallow in the winter. So, but we do not have the air conditioning in the off season because we take those domes down for the off season.
Okay. Yeah, got it. I think first top of mind, if it's not supply, I'll get into it. I mean, this is only like a 7-slide presentation or so, but we do have other energy services that could be like HVAC upgrades, lighting upgrades. That might be something that you'd be interested in. Again, that's more of a case by case basis, but we do a lot of different, I guess, equipment upgrades. So if you have an old HVAC system, maybe that's something that you be worth looking into. Maybe it's not as efficient, or maybe it's 10 years old and you think, an upgrade might do something to help increase the efficiency by, 10, 20%, something like that, and ultimately reduce your bill by 10, 20%. I mean, that's just top of mind. I'm not entirely positive that we'd be able to help you there or not, but top of mind is probably the first thing I think of, because unfortunately, yeah, in mass, gas is regulated. There is no deregulation, meaning that we can't help you on your actual supply rate, unfortunately. So, yeah, I guess unfortunately on the actual rate itself, that's not something we could help you with. But maybe on a technical or an equipment upgrade, that might be something that could have some value for you guys, or at least worth looking into, anyways. All right. Well, let me move on here a little bit. So, again, what we're doing for the most part is, I mean, our core offering is energy supply. So electric and gas supply, I think it's pretty easy for people to understand that. Like, there's a lot of components that go into it. A standard bill, you have your supply and your delivery. Delivery, we're not touching whatsoever. That's just with your utility company. We can't do anything about that. But supply cost is the big one. So as I said before, if you're getting hit with 10% month over, or 10 cents month over month, and we can lock you in at 6, 7 cents, something like that, when you have operating expenses or your costs are that steep, the 30% help on a supply bill is huge, throughout a year and over time. So that's usually the first spot that we help people out, figuring out what their load is, their usage, see if there's any way that we can, reduce those costs. And ultimately, what you guys, I mean, as owners or, GMs or whatever you guys might be with your businesses, it's all about improving your budgeting and planning, right? So you don't want to get hit with again, Greg, you brought up with the gas, which unfortunately I can't help you with on the supply, but you know, in those deregulated states, so even for like electric, I'm sure even with those big the winter we just had, you probably got hit with something pretty significant there as well. Maybe not as much as gas, but I'm sure your electric bill went up a bit as well. So that's another thing to look at for you guys. So let's move on. This is kind of what I was talking with you about, Greg. Thing that we do help with quite a bit after supply is we get into some cost reduction revenue opportunities. So lighting, LED upgrades. I guess in your case with the seasonal dome, it might not be as relevant for you guys, but for anybody else watching this or checking this out later, we do work with companies where they have those old, like luminescent yellow lighting that isn't efficient at all, and we can come in, upgrade those to LED lightings, and ultimately your usage goes down because your lighting's more efficient, and then that might increase or result in lighting savings on the electric supply side of 30 to 60%. So again, I guess with you guys, a lot of time it's probably your AC is the most important expense on the electric side, and the second's probably lighting for most of you guys. So again, something to think about that might be able to help you guys out with. The other thing I brought up, HVAC. Another thing, if for you guys in the winter, we might be able to help you out with something there where it could just reduces your total energy reduction, improves your reliability. That way, your rate's still going to come up quite a bit in the winter if you get hit with another one of those storms, but at least you'll have a better system that'll reduce your overall consumption, which would result in lower bills. Another thing we do as well is on-site solar. So I'll be getting into some cases that I've actually been doing myself with other sports facilities, where it kind of makes sense with a lot of sports facilities because a lot of you guys have just it's pretty standard like rectangular building with two giant, slanted roofs a lot of the time. So solar is sometimes an option that makes sense for a lot of people if they're going to be at that location long term, and they say, you know, get it out of the way now, and then we'll be going green and offsetting your electric usage with, as soon as it's installed, and then you'll be set up for long-term success, things like that. Um, One thing that any company should look into, it varies state by state, but it's called community solar. So I'll just give you an example. So in New York State, there's all these solar fields throughout the state, like the grids. You guys probably drive past them all the time. Basically, those need to be filled up. So the developers of those grids, they need businesses to be using a portion of those grids. They need to fill it up all the way to make sure they're getting all their money through the state. So most times when we get a company, I guess like registered in the program for the grid, it's 5 to 10% guaranteed savings off the entire bill, supply and delivery. So it does vary state by state. New York State, for the most time, it's 5 to 10%. I know in Illinois, I got a company on a 15% savings, and all that is they're basically you're using a little bit of your electricity is coming from those grids, and in result, the state is crediting you with 5 to 10% off of your supply and delivery, which is honestly just a no brainer because there's no installations required. It's just free savings, honestly. So there are specific states where it's more common and more prevalent than others, but that is a pretty interesting product for a lot of facilities that I work with. Just because it's no brainer, free savings.
Nolan, question.
Yeah.
Regarding what you were just talking about solar options is state by state, and additionally the deregulation. Is there a quick link or a map that people can refer to identify whether or not they're in a deregulation zone or not, or maybe qualify for community solar?
Yes. So do you want me to send you something right now, or do you think
No,
like,
no, just
yeah,
beyond the
there
chat,
is.
something that we can send out with the
I could
recording.
also I could also send a list to you as well if you want to like send it in an email blast or whatever. But yes, there is.
Awesome.
For the community solar and all of these options that I'm going over right now, we have like an energy services team, like our engineering team. We do this process in 48 states, so it's excluding Alaska, Hawaii. Um, Energy deregulation itself, it's only available in 16 states, which primarily is Midwest, Northeast US. So most Northeast states deregulated, so we can help you out there. Then there's Texas, Florida, Georgia, Illinois. I could send you the link, but there's 16 states, and I'd say the majority of them are Midwest to Northeast of the U.S.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions on this before I move on? I don't know if anybody. I mean, ultimately today, I think my goal is if there's a seed of doubt that you might benefit from even just a quick review, no harm in doing so. I'll get into kind of how that process works, but ultimately today isn't really to get into the nitty gritty of case by case everyone, but it's more so just, hey, I might be able to save some money. I'll send over a bill for a quick review, and if we can help, great. If there's value, that's awesome. And if not, then at least you're in a decent spot.
Yeah, this is Sean here. I actually have a quick question, I think, on that. And you might be touching on that next, but
Mhm.
on the HVAC side, since we're in Mass and we can't have the gas deregulation,
Mhm.
do you guys kind of have collateral or information on if we looked into like an HVAC upgrade, what those costs would be, and then essentially what the return is on how quickly we start seeing, making our money
Yeah,
back,
absolutely. No,
essentially?
absolutely. Yeah, I
Perfect.
could. What I would do, Sean, is ultimately after this, like I'm not necessarily the expert on the HVAC side. We have like our own like solutions engineering team that could get you some actual numbers and some pricing that makes sense. What I would probably do after this is I could shoot you an email, you shoot me one, and I would get some literature for you, shoot it past you, and then you can figure out if it's something worth looking into or not.
Perfect. And then just kind of going, I guess, service by service on the electric side, we're kind of
Mhm.
in a unique position where our bills are actually subsidized right now.
Mhm.
So we actually don't know what our electrical consumption is and at really what a projected cost would be. And the reason why I say that is we don't know when, but it is going to happen that we will start paying for that electricity. So is there, I guess, really the level of information you need? Would you be able to help us understand what our electrical consumption is to prep for that? Or do you need essentially bills and our actual energy usage to give us any kind of information on the electric side?
So you don't have like any accounting for like meter info at the very least?
Greg, would you happen to know?
So we We are located on an old U.S. military base south of
Okay.
Boston, and part of that is not an active base anymore by any means, but part of that is from an electric perspective is still funded by the United States Navy.
Okay.
So the air base is, for the most part, is from an electric side of things is still funded by them, including us, which has been a great thing for a long time. But like Sean said, that the old base is now under except for us because we're privately owned, but is under new ownership by a new real estate development group who's going to come in and start putting bulldozers in the ground and building commercial and residential and all that fun stuff. So
Mhm.
that will change. But as of right now, the answer is no. So
I,
go
but I
ahead.
mean, I guess I'd say maybe. I don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. I think if we just had got your address, so like usually what our pricing desk needs to pull like full. So usually I would say, hey, send me one bill that'll have your account number, your meter number, and then our team goes, behind the scenes. They can pull up that meter and they can pull your entire usage for the last like 5 years. They can see month by month exactly what your usage was. So um, my recommendation, maybe with just an address, I'd be curious to see if my pricing desk could still pull anything at all. Maybe they could, with the address, they could, narrow it down.
Yeah.
Not positive though. Not positive.
No worries. I'll send it over.
Okay,
Cool.
cool.
And then just last question, just touching on the solar piece, similar
Mhm.
to the gas question. Is there a way to kind of get a quote of, you look at the facility, what it would take to convert us to solar, and same thing, what that upfront investment would be versus
Mhm.
what is that time to just start making our money back?
Absolutely. So usually what we try to do is, I mean, it's a 15 to 30-minute call, but I would bring on he's like our director of the solutions team, Dave, and he basically, even beforehand, I could probably tell you what we need, but usually they want to see like if you have a blueprint of your building, or even sometimes they can just do it through like Google Maps type of thing to see like the above view type of thing and see what your roofs look like. And then if you have some details of like square footage, things like that, they can usually get a pretty good idea of what makes sense, what might make sense for your buildings. And then from there, they can kind of tell you, hey, we can. So like usually, which I'll get into as well, it might not be the case for you guys right now because you don't have your electric bills. But what we do is like, let's say you get on-site solar or an HVAC upgrade or whatever. We actually work in that cost into your electric bill once it's fully built out. So if you got a new HVAC system, let's say it takes 2 weeks to put that in, your next bill would have the HVAC system cost is basically financing, but the way that we do it, which is nice, is there's no interest on that. So they basically build out so you're more efficient and your electric usage has gone down. And then over the next however many months, we're charging a chunk of your supply bill is being charged to pay off that HVAC upgrade at no interest at all. So it's like financing without interest, which is huge until it's fully paid off. It's not like no interest for 12 months, then your next bill there's interest. It's fully zero interest once it's built out for you. But yeah, I'd say next step would be learn more about your guys', I guess, the buildings and see what they look like. Maybe a blueprint would be awesome. And then our solutions team would kind of break down what you're looking at on cost wise and how long it would take until that's paid off and until you're actually like saving money, I guess.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it. So it sounds like just connecting via email after this call would be kind of the next step to just start this whole conversation process.
100%. Yeah. I
Cool.
mean, we can usually figure out pretty quick, but like I would bring on our solutions guy and we would, 30-minute call, we'd be able to figure out, we'd learn more about your business, the size, what you guys are working with, all that stuff. And usually within 15 minutes, if we're going to be able to actually help you out or not, or if we can provide some sort of value, which is usually we are able to. But again, your guys' situation does sound interesting because you don't have those bills, obviously. But
Yep.
you never know. I'm sure there's something we could figure out.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
We have that gas bill, but we know you can't help us quite there.
I know. I wish Mass was deregulated on gas. I don't. It's so weird depending on the state, but it is what it is. Yeah. Okay. So this was what I was kind of getting into. So any of these things that I listed off here, as I said, it's no upfront cost and it's 0% interest financing. So again, it's just while you're saving money once everything's installed, your savings kind of offset those costs because it's being applied to your bill, but you're already getting savings through the upgrades. So like sometimes your bills look the exact same as they've looked the last forever, but then once it's paid off, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I'm saving 15% compared to last month. So it's just, you're paying it all off 0% interest. Very like easy way and low stress for the operators or the building owners. So I do have I have a couple case studies. This is Pico, so PA. I think they're like outside Philly, like Westchester, PA or something. But anyways, this is a hockey rink I worked with. So currently work with. So it's kind of just a standard example of how supply costs can, on the electric side, this one is strictly electric, but how much supply costs can hammer you if you're not set up correctly. So this is just based on in October. So we signed them, yeah, October to November bill 2024. Their supply rate was almost 20 cents. It was like 19 whatever cents here. And that was in October. And October is not even really a bad month. Historically. It's usually November, December, January, February are the tough ones. So it's not even their worst. And ultimately, all we did is we got them onto a fixed supply rate. So I forget what it was, the actual rate itself. It might have been like 8 or 9 cents or something like that. But their monthly bill on average reduced from 16 grand to 7 grand. And then the comparison we had was one October to the next October, just to kind of get you a general idea. But their energy bill was basically cut in half just by reviewing it. And this is obviously a good example. It's not always this significant. It might only be 10% or so. This is one that was great savings. And because it was kind of like the way that this ended up working out is they didn't want to do any of the other stuff, the HVAC or the lighting or the solar or anything like that, or the EV charging. They didn't want to do any of that yet. But we're actually starting discussions to get this stuff. They just renewed with me 2 weeks ago. Because things had gone well for a year and a half. And they said, all right, like the savings are legit. We're in a good spot. I kind of built that trust up with them. And they said, let's look into the other stuff now. So we are working on pretty much everything, the lighting, solar, EV charging, which I probably didn't bring up, but EV charging is honestly a great tool for a lot of like public sports facilities, only because if you don't have any there, even if you have like 2 to 4 and it's being used pretty consistently, it's just another revenue stream. So off the top of my head, what I can kind of remember, one of my facilities anyways, they had like 3 parking spaces, EV charging set up, and over a year they ended up like making like 16 grand or something like that. So like it's definitely another income stream that most people don't think about, or they might not have set up at their facility. And with the way, cars are, I don't know, the technology is growing and whatever, there's a lot more EV charging. A lot more people are looking for that type of stuff as well. So just something to think about that might be worth it to whoever. And then again, so just stability impact. All you want to do is remove that exposure to the unpredictable utility, right? So utilities can be tough because you don't know what you're going to get charged. You might just get hit with something really, really high in those crappy months, or even in any other months, you might get hit with a enormous supply rate. And all we're trying to do is reduce that risk. We're not necessarily chasing the lowest rate. It's not like, you know, hey, we want to get 6 cents and you're charging us 7. It's like, well, it might be 7, but in 10 months, in 10 of the months of the year, you might have gotten hit with 10 cents. So you're still saving a lot of money. You might not beat the utility every month, but if you beat the utility 8, 9 months of the year, then you're set up for success for sure. Does anybody have any questions on that? I think we're in a good spot. Cool. And then portfolio level experience. So my biggest client that's most similar to a lot of the members in this association would be Get Air Trampoline. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. There's like Get Air and then there's like Sky Zone is the other big one. They're both nationwide trampoline parks, but ultimately they're like 100,000 square feet, pretty similar to that of like an indoor facility. So that's probably the most comparable thing that I have outside of like hockey rinks that I work with pretty often. So, anyways, signed them about 2 years ago, and I actually have a meeting with them next week. Anyways, that's kind of neither here nor there, but signed I think like 30 of they had like 30 locations in the deregulated markets. So got those all signed on 2 years ago, and their contracts are expiring in October, and they're basically discussing renewing with me, but then also this again, it's kind of the trust thing. Like a lot of people, they don't want to say, hey, I'll sign on for supply and I want lighting and EV, all that stuff. I understand most people just want to worry about their bill and they might not have time to care about the other stuff. But usually when we get a chance and we prove our trust in the savings over a year or two or the contract, that's when the cross selling, the other services and products might make sense. And that's when they can start thinking, all right, we trust this supplier, we trust me. And then maybe, EV charging would make sense at our location. So that's something that we're working on with them, but just want to kind of throw that out there just for some credibility, I guess, just to say like, hey, we do work with a lot of businesses that are similar to indoor sports facilities I guess trampoline parks might be a indoor sports facility, but that depends on what you think. Any questions on that one? I mean, it's not really questions. I was making statements really. So next steps, as I was saying, again, like all we're trying to do is if you think there might be an opportunity to, save some money, it's pretty easy. I usually ask for one electric and gas bill. I'd say 12 months of bills is usually preferred, just so you can see, kind of paint a full picture of what you've been getting charged over the last year. Sometimes 1 month isn't enough, but that's just, so that we have more ammo to figure out what might actually be beneficial for you. But usually ask just one electric, one gas. Um, we can compare what you're currently paying versus what the market is right now. So again, that comes down to weather a lot of the time. So like right now is a great time. March, April, May, great months for the energy market, and then same for September, October, November, also good months. June, July, August, January, February, December, January, February. Those months are usually not great for shopping energy rates, just because in December the rate might be 12 cents, and then in March it might be 8 cents, and it's worth waiting those 4 months to lock in something lower ultimately. And all I'm trying to do is just see what you guys are working with. You might already be working with the supplier, honestly. You might be on a fixed rate, you might be on a variable rate, and all we're trying to do is get you some recommendations. If you're in a good spot, I can usually see on the bill if there's any hidden fees. If you are with a supplier, they might be sneaking in something, a little management fee or something that doesn't make sense. And ultimately just get you guys some recommendations. That's all I'm trying to do today. Just say, hey, give me a shot. If you're interested in the potential savings, shoot me a message, an email, a text, call, whatever, and I'll let you know pretty quick if there is something we might be able to do. And there's my info. I'm sure James will be able to fire this out in an email or something like that. I'd also imagine I'll probably be emailing everyone in the association over the next couple weeks, just with another little, hey, here, how are you type of whatever, and a little info. But yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. I'd be happy to get you guys a review. I think that's really it for my presentation. Pretty general. I think that's really it for my presentation. Pretty general. Just kind of want to show you guys some things that we offer. Nothing too crazy. Yeah. I don't know if anybody has any other questions that they want to fire away, but feel free.
You answered my last question, which was email address, which I just copied. So I will, after this, just send a quick follow-up to you with Greg on it, just to kind of open the thread to see, what that free quote might yield on kind of the three elements of just, electricity, solar, and then gas, which would be more of the HVAC upgrade section, since obviously Mass is not looking to deregulate gas. Which,
Yeah.
do you know, kind of in your role, do you have any insights if that's a just not deregulate it now, but in the pipeline? Or is that like a firm no, the state of Mass is just never going to look into deregulating gas? Like, do you know kind of how that conversation has went?
It just with Mass, I'm not sure. I could find out for you from people that are smarter than me, but I know, like, for example, it's like Indiana has been those things just require so much like state legislation that it seems like it's a very long time. Like they might say, next 2 years it's going to be deregulated, and then 5 years down the road it's still not. So that you never really know. Um, so I could always ask though. I guess yeah. Like in the grand scheme, people say eventually all 50 states will be deregulated, but it's just such a slow process. So like mass gas, yeah, I'm sure it will happen eventually, but the timeline you just never really know. At least I don't. I could always ask around though and see if anybody's been keeping track on that stuff to see like the next, maybe there's a couple states that might be coming deregulated in the next couple of years. Maybe Mass is one of them, but I could always ask around about that as well.
Cool. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hey, Nolan,
Yep.
what about from the perspective of a municipal electricity? Like they say that that's like so discounted already, and
Good.
the pros and cons of every time I want to get rid of a solar company that's trying to sell me solar, the quick thing. And the funny thing is I did solar in another building with has national grid, but the word municipal electric kind of turns them off. Like, yeah, they can't do much, or it's not as impactful.
Yeah. So, no, good question. And that what they're telling you is correct. A lot of time, if you're in a muni, so like a town city that has their own like electric infrastructure, usually those rates are already like bare minimum zero margin rates. So like if you are using those, if you're on muni rates, you're guaranteed already in a great spot. And that would be a time when, yeah, you could look into the added services like the solar or maybe the community solar, depending on where you are, or other upgrades. But on the electric supply rate itself, if you're on a muni rate, you're usually set up pretty well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but so my follow-up question is, obviously there is, from what I've experienced with my other building that I did put solar on the roof, there's a difference between doing something like a PPA, power purchase agreement with the person putting up the solar. They're taking the upfront cost and then you're getting the benefits in the back. Or is it better to actually spend a few $100,000 to do solar on your roof and then you see a lot more savings every month, but the break even might be 2 to 5 years or 3 to 5 years or
Down the
whatever
road.
it is?
Yeah. I couldn't tell you which one's better, which one's not, but I could tell you there's people that I work with that could, and they could give you a side-by-side comparison of what each one, maybe the benefits and the negatives of both. So if you wanted to find that out, I could lead you in the right direction to get you an answer on that. Because I'm sure there are benefits to either one, and sometimes you don't want to eat those costs right away. So we definitely get you a comparison though, for sure, and say, hey, you're in a good spot, or maybe this would make more sense for what you're working with right now.
Okay.
Nolan, a quick question on the EV charger front. I know you said have a dedicated team of engineers who are quote unquote the experts on this, but
Yeah.
how does that fit into a business model if someone wanted to set up some EV chargers in their parking lot? Is it sort of like they get profit per charge, or is it more of
Yeah,
an amenity thing? As a facility owner, you can say, well, we have them, and that keeps people coming and showing up because they know you have these EV chargers.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. So it all comes down to margin. So um, the standard, I guess, depends on the state, but let's say you have three chargers, three spots, and you might only be making $8 a day because you might be charging, you might be paying something, and then you figure out the margin that you're going to charge the people that are using the stations. The average we usually find can be like $8 to $12. Well, I guess in New York State, around where I am, it's usually like $8 to $12 a day per parking spot. But again, that's like depends on the traffic, and then also depends on how I guess it's traffic overall because they might not necessarily be even using your facility. They might just be parking there to charge. But it's just a margin thing. It comes down to what you paid versus what you're going to be charging. You can choose what you're going to be charging people that go and park there to use it. And again, like I said, there's been some companies we work with that they're like moderately busy, like nothing too crazy. Then they only have like 3 to 4 spots, and throughout the year they're making 20 grand off of it. So it is something worth looking into. I'd say traffic is probably the most important aspect. Obviously, you want people to be sitting in those charging up at all times, and maybe if you live in an area where people don't you really utilize that, or they don't have the electric cars, and or they don't have hybrids, then it might not make sense for you. But there are a lot of states now and a lot of facilities, even like in Buffalo, most hockey rinks that I go to, there's like at least 4 to 6 charging stations at each one. And I wouldn't even say Buffalo's very like advanced on the going green thing, but it is becoming more prevalent. So yeah, to answer your question, it's just honestly just another income stream for you guys. And even if it's $20 a day per spot, or 25 bucks in total throughout over a year, you're bringing in some hard cash for sure.
Oh yeah, that definitely adds up. And I've seen
Yeah.
a consistent influx of EVs here in Virginia alone. We see so many of these charging stations popping up. So
Yeah, I was out in California. I was out in what was it called? Irvine, and I went to I went to a sports facility. It was like a indoor roller hockey facility, and there was like 50 parking spots for EV charging. It was crazy. I never seen that many in like one spot at a facility, but yeah, they had like at least 50. So depending on the state, depending on where you are, it's obviously more prevalent. But even having a couple, yeah, if you have a couple, and you might bring in an extra 10 grand a year for doing nothing really. So just another added stream of income that might make sense, and basically zero effort on your part.
yeah, very good. All right. Any other questions from the gallery before we let Nolan go? All
Crickets,
righty. Well,
crickets, James.
yeah, well, we have a small audience today, and I'm sure
No, I know. I'm joking. I'm just joking.
but the value comes for those of you who are watching this as a recording. We want to thank everyone for tuning in and for showing up today and for all the questions that you guys threw at Nolan. Obviously, the rabbit hole goes much deeper, but in order to pursue that, you want to reach out to Nolan. His information will also be in the description on the video. We want to thank Nolan for taking some time out to talk with us about energy savings. And for those, let me do my shameless conference plug. If you haven't signed up for our conference coming up in Reno in May, definitely do so. Get your hotel booking before those room rates go down. And Nolan, thanks a bunch for coming here today. I'm sure you're eager to talk to everyone listening. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no, thanks guys. Appreciate it. Again, yeah, if you want a review, it takes 30 minutes. So if you're curious at all, shoot me a message and I'll tell you right away. Keep it pretty black and white. If you can save you money, great. If not, then no worries. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, thanks for having me, James. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I hear from some of you guys, and looking forward to making more connections with the association here.
Awesome. Thanks again, Nolan. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.
See you guys.